I worked at the haunted motel of my nightmares. Room 403 holds a dark secret. I never should have opened that door. The chill of the night wrapped around me as I stood in front of room 403, my chest tight, a knot of dread twisting in my gut. I had taken a mundane job at the Crossroad Motel, a rundown place where hopes of a good night's rest sank beneath layers of grime and neglect. The fluorescent lights flickered endlessly, casting a sickly hue over the threaded carpets. It was just another boring shift, or so I thought. Normalcy shattered when the clock struck midnight. A cold breeze slithered through the lobby, a whisper that coiled around my spine. I could smell something metallic, and then I heard its soft, scratchy noises that drifted down the hallway. I froze, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. A gentle thud from behind room 403 made my skin prickle. It felt alive, like a heartbeat echoing through the walls. The shadows danced around me, flickering unnaturally. I blinked, stills of darkness shifting in my peripheral vision. The air grew heavier, laden with silence. My fingers trembled as they hovered over the doorknob. I heard hushed whispers, not words, but the unmistakable sound of anguish. It pulled me, lured me like a moth to a flame. I was terrified, yet captivated. What lay behind that door? Sudden movement made me jump a flicker. I turned, my pulse racing. A barely there figure, just a glimpse in the murky corner of my eye. I swung around, but nothing. Just shadows. Fear washed over me, a tide that pulled my senses under. I felt the icy grip of panic as I forced myself to move closer. Each step was a small eternity. The doorknob felt freezing under my palm, a stark contrast to the clamminess of the air. Breathless, I pressed my ear to the door. More noises. A voice. It sounded fragile, desperate. It wrapped around my thoughts, pulling me deeper into a spiraling vortex of dread. My body screamed to turn back, yet the urge to know was overpowering. I pushed on the door, just a fraction, and it creaked open. Just then, a loud slam echoed down the corridor. My chest seized. I stumbled back, heart racing, as the figure lurked back into view, seemingly closer this time. I gasped, and the world around me grayed. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The door swung ajar with a groan that echoed like a haunting refrain. A thick shroud of darkness spilled from within, wrapping around me in an embrace both inviting and suffocating. My breath condensed in small clouds, the air laden with a scent of decay that made my stomach churn. I stepped cautiously into the room, your heart a drum of panic pounding within my chest. The flickering light bulb above cast a timid glow, revealing a room frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture loomed ominously in the corners, a forgotten bed sagging under the weight of unseen burdens. But it was the walls that drew my attention. They seemed to breathe, pulsating ever so slightly, as if mirroring my own fear. The hushed whispers grew louder, a cacophony of anguished voices pleading for release, for recognition. I scanned the room, half expecting the source of the murmurs to materialize before me. There was a cracked mirror hanging crookedly above a scuffed dresser, its surface distorted like the facade of the souls trapped within. I took a step forward, wanting to capture a glimpse of whatever horror lurked behind my reflection. The moment I did, the mirror rippled, shattering the reflection into countless shards, each piece reflecting a scene of torment. A child's laughter echoed in the room, eerie and hollow, cutting through my thoughts like a shard of glass. With every second, the atmosphere thickened around me, squeezing tight as shadows snaked closer, morphing into grotesque figures that flickered at the edges of my vision. My head spun, and I fought the urge to retreat from this malevolent presence. The whispers grew frenzied, a chorus of overlap, drowning out my thoughts. As I moved deeper into the room, the temperature plummeted even further. I could see my breath swirling in the air, but the sound of my heartbeat was deafening, drowning out any rational thought. And then I caught sight of it. A tiny doll, Its porcelain face cracked, sat on the edge of the bed. It wore a tattered dress stained with age, its glassy eyes wide and dark, reflecting a story of sorrow. I felt its gaze pierce through me, as if it were alive, judging my intrusion. With trembling fingers, I reached forward to pick it up. As my skin brushed the cold ceramic, the whispers exploded into screams. They tore through me, a storm of ghastly cries begging for release, clawing at the very fabric of my sanity. The voices melded into one name, a name that echoed in my mind, reverberating off the walls. Lucy. The room began to twist and warp, the pillars of shadow rising in anger. I tried to pull my hand back, but it wouldn't budge. The doll seemed to latch onto my essence, holding me captive. Suddenly, the door slammed shut as the air thickened, sealing any chance of escape. A sharp wind howled through the room, and with it, I felt a cold breath against my ear, chilling me to the bone. "Find her," it hissed, the walls shivering as if responding to the command. "You must find Lucy." Panic surged through me, an avalanche of fear as the shadows drew closer, closing in like a vice. The doll's eyes flickered, shimmering with life, twisting into a grotesque smile. Just then, a dark shape materialized behind me, a figure emerging from the shadows with arms outstretched. I couldn't scream. All I could do was freeze, trapped between the weight of a dark past and an uncertain future. And just as I felt the cold embrace of the phantom wrap around me, the whispers crescendoed into a singular screech that echoed through the motel, slicing through the night. "Find her before it's too late." The floor beneath me trembled violently, but before I could gather my thoughts, the lights flickered one last time, plunging the room into darkness. Desperate, I strained my senses. The weight lifted, but only for a moment. Just as I turned to find a way out, a hand gripped my shoulder from behind, sending icy tendrils of terror coursing through my veins that I spun around, ready to confront the unknown only to find nothing there. The silence intensified, heavy and stifling, and in that terrifying moment, I knew I was not alone. The doll slipped from my fingers, landing with a thud on the carpet. In the blink of an eye, it fell forward, its eyes rolling back, revealing empty pits of darkness as the whispers erupted once more, piercing through the stillness. "Lucy!" I screamed, the name swallowed up by the encroaching darkness as the shadows closed in, threatening to consume me whole. And then, just as that darkness leaned in to seize me, the door burst open, a blinding light pouring in, and the last thing I saw as I was tugged into the void was a familiar face emerging at the threshold, a twisted smile plastered across their features. I found her. The blinding light from the open door receded quickly, suffocated by a sudden rush of cold that enveloped me. I could only feel the remnants of warmth vanish, snuffed out as shadows surged closer. My heart pounded like an erratic drum, the remnants of the dreamlike brightness now replaced by an ominous weight. Was it the same figure from the earlier encounter? The one that had whispered, "Find her"? I stumbled back, the damp carpet snagging my shoe as I fell to my knees. The moment my knees hit the ground, the doll's laughter echoed once more, a disturbing melody that slithered around me, curling into my ears like smoke. I looked down and saw the doll, once again poised upright, its porcelain features perfectly intact, a smile frozen on its face, but its eyes were no longer hollow. They were alive, swirling with something dark and sinister, beckoning me to lean in closer. Desperation clawed at my insides. I had to escape, but the shadows danced at the periphery, pulsing with malicious intent. They seemed to murmur amongst themselves, a low chant rising steadily, crescendoing into a chant that twisted my mind. "Lucy, Lucy, Lucy," the name became an unholy mantra thrumming within the walls like the heartbeat of a beast. I stumbled backward, my gaze darting around the room, looking for an exit that felt further away with each terrifying second. The window, perhaps? But as I turned, a despairing realization struck. There were no windows, no means of egress. Just me, the cursed doll, and the shadows that lurked hungrily around me. Then I heard it. A scraping noise beneath the floorboards. It echoed with the force of chains grinding against stone, a rusted cry that sent my heart racing anew. This time, the whispers shifted to a new name, wreathing the air like smoke around a dying fire. Emerson, Emerson, it felt tangible, like those whispers were clawing their way through the layers of reality, tapping into the recesses of my mind. I recalled the newspaper clippings I had found in the motel's lobby about a family tragedy years prior. A little girl named Lucy, her family torn apart, lost to something terrible. But Emerson? The name held a deeper weight, hidden just under the surface of the horrific history. And suddenly, the doll tilted its head, as if hearing me, as if knowing what I pondered. It captivated me in its stare, and without realizing it, I found my fingers brushing against its cold, cracked face again. The shadows perked up at my touch, swirling and twisting, taking form as monstrous hands that crept forth into the light like hungry spirits clawing from the depths. I recoiled, the doll crackling with a life of its own, as if it were alive, yearning for something just beyond my reach. In a horrifying instant, all sound died, swallowed by an oppressive silence. Then came the thud. A heavy, rhythmic beating reverberated from behind the adjacent wall, growing louder, more insistent. It felt like a heartbeat, but there was no living thing here, just forgotten relics and a pulsing darkness hungry for my fear. The floorboards beneath me creaked, shifting under the weight of unseen pressure. As I pressed my back against the wall, eyes wide with terror, the doll spoke. Its voice was high-pitched and brittle, as though it had dislodged itself from the past. Emerson is waiting, and before I could pull away, the wall beside me cracked, splintering with a shattering force. Shadows erupted from within, a whirlwind of darkness reaching out, pulling me closer. I could scarcely breathe, the stench of decay rising as the remnants of anger and sorrow escaped from the fissure, whispering tales of those lost within the room. Just as the pull became unbearable, as I felt myself teetering on the cliff of the void, I heard a child's voice piercing through the disarray. "Help me," it belonged to a little girl. The ethereal quality sent a jolt through my veins. Lucy. Was it Lucy? But the name of the echoing voice mingled with the shadows, taunting, twisting the reality I struggled to comprehend. "Find her. You must find her." With panic surging anew, I wrenched my gaze back to the doll, my instincts screaming to run. The stitches of this nightmare wove tighter around me as I realized I had no choice. I had to confront whatever lived in this cursed motel room. As the crack in the wall widened, the shadow stretched outward, engulfing the room in darkness once more. The wall began to dissolve, and in its place, an unimaginable void opened, swirling with the remnants of the pasta pulsating, heart-stopping abyss. And then, from the depths of that darkness, I heard a laugh that chilled me to the bone, a familiar laugh echoing in return. "Lucy, I'm coming for you." Just then, in a flash of blinding light, a figure stumbled through the maw of the Shadowsa girl, her appearance flickering. Her hair fell like strands of silk around her fragile shoulders, and her eyes brimmed with terror and something darker, something unfathomable. "Help me, please." She reached out as the shadows constricted, drawing me in. A sickening twist pulled at my gut, and before I could react, the doll shot up, its eyes glowing fiercely, locking onto Lucy. "Find them both," it commanded, "or lose them forever." The ground buckled beneath me, the world splintering in a violent rumble, as both Lucy and the shadow were swallowed into the darkness. The very fabric of the room writhed, and in that moment, as the shadows screamed around me, I felt the last shred of hope slip away. Nothing remained but the pressing void, darkness swallowing all sound, all reason, as I descended toward the abyss, forced to face both fate and the horror that awaited me until I was yanked back by the pulling, curling fingers of despair. Would I find Lucy, or be lost in the shadows forever? The air chilled, wrapping itself around me like a shroud as I tried to comprehend the insanity unfolding. The void loomed larger, its edges pulsating with a deep, unnatural hunger. A part of me screamed to retreat, to escape the grotesque tableau playing out before me. But the doll's gaze was a tangible force, pinning me in place, beckoning me towards the encroaching darkness. Desperate, I glanced around the room for anything that might offer a thread of hope or salvation. The remnants of old furniture loomed like sentinels in the dim light, casting long shadows that seemed to shift and flicker with their own sentience. The air was thick with a musty scent, layered with the mildew of years long past. And just when I thought I had glimpsed a way out through the shrouded remnants of torn curtains, a sudden movement to my left snapped my attention back towards the heart of the darkness. From within the shadows, I saw another figure emerge, this one larger and far more threatening. Its shape coiled and twisted, features indistinct but oozing malice. I immediately recognized it as a manifestation of my fear. A deep growl reverberated through the walls, shaking the plaster around me as the creature opened its maw, revealing a cavern of darkness. "Join us," it whispered, a voice that dripped with venom and promissory despair. My fingers trembled, and I gripped the doll, its porcelain body growing warmer, a stark contrast to the encroaching cold. "It's too late for you," it hissed with a voice both familiar and disconcertingly smooth. "Lucy," I cried, cutting through the restraints of fear. "Where are you?" The shadows recoiled as if I had inflicted a deep wound. The girl's voice echoed back, soft but laced with an urgency that tugged at the deepest corners of my heart. "Find me before it's too late." I strained to hone in on that voice, desperation rounding the edges of my courage. "But where? What do I need to do?" As I spoke, the force of the darkness began to push against me, a palpable weight that fogged my mind and twisted my thoughts with horrific clarity. The doll pulsed in my hand, its eyes spiraling into swirls of black and gold as it answered, but its voice came as a rippling echo through the sphere of cold. "Trust in the darkness. It remembers." The strain of the shadows around me increased, squeezing tighter as I summoned whatever remnants of strength I had left. The room felt alive, the walls creaking in painful protest as if haunted by anguished cries I couldn't hear. I was losing sight of myself, my identity blurring at the edges, and rationality fraying with every moment I remained. Emerson, the growling apparition, boomed, its features momentarily coalescing into a visage of despair, yet that visage was familiar. A snapshot torn from a memory long buried. The name clung to the back of my mind, a vital puzzle piece. Emerson. Was he a part of it? I shouted, the shrillness of my voice swallowed by the unending void. Is he linked to Lucy? In that moment, the room convulsed, in a deep tremor coursing through the ground. The shadows shrieked in a chorus of torment as they responded, swirling like storm clouds. "You must choose. Save her, or be consumed by the past." A flash of light ignited the abyss. And there, for a flickering instant, I saw Lucy's face again, pale, frightened, yet filled with an intensity that rallied my blood. My pulse raced as I felt the tug of the doll, now glowing with an ethereal luminescence, pulling me closer to the shadowy maw. "Find them both," it reiterated. Panic surged anew as I glimpsed wisps of the past swirling like smoke around me. Images began to flicker. A happy girl playing in sunlight, a relentless storm creeping on the horizon, a family crumbling under the weight of something unseen. The doll twisted in my grip, as though siphoning fragments of those memories into its porcelain face. And just like that, a notion struck me, a desperate plan forged under the weight of desperation. If you exist in the darkness, I embrace it. With that declaration, I let go of my inhibitions and plunged toward the relentless shadows. The pull was immediate, as if the room itself screamed in recognition. Tendrils reached out, wrapping around me, and the darkness flooded my senses, seamlessly shifting into an ocean of memories. Questions drifted through, but the urgency propelled me deeper. But as I dived into the unyielding void, the atmosphere thickened with a sudden menace. A pain I knew was coming, one I didn't realize until I was ensnared, frozen. Staring back at me from the blackness was the monster devoid of form, its eyes glimmering with the collective anguish of the past. "Welcome to the end," it rasped, its breath chilling me to the bone. "Now you face the truth." Before I could protest, a piercing scream erupted. It was Lucy's voice, loud and agonizing, echoing in the infinite darkness. "Help me. Please don't leave me." The shadows churned with a violent hunger, and I felt myself being pulled deeper and deeper within its depths. Time no longer held meaning as I grappled for Lucy, fighting against the rising tide of despair that threatened to drown me. And in that heart-stopping moment, just as I swam through the suffocating dark, an icy hand reached out from the void, grasping at the very essence of my being. "Find them before it's too late, or they will be lost forever." The voice of the doll echoed with desperate urgency, resonating throughout the black, merging with the screams around me. Then, everything went dark, and something monstrous loomed before me, whispering sweet promises of oblivion. The shadows laughed hysterically, engulfing the screams, merging them with my thoughts. What awaited me at the end of this plunge into the unknown? Would I rescue Lucy, or had I sealed our fates into an everlasting night? The swell of darkness receded momentarily, revealing a barren landscape where time felt stunted, as if the very fabric of existence had been caught in a continuous loop of despair. A distant echo of laughter hung heavy in the air, as if taunting me from the unseen corners of this realm, twisting my perception into a grotesque parody of joy. I stood in the hollow of an unfamiliar room, dimly lit by a flickering light bulb that dangled precariously from the ceiling, swaying like a pendulum counting down my last moments of sanity. The peeling wallpaper, once vibrant, was now a lifeless gray patterns of writhing vines bled into anguished faces whose eyes seemed to follow my every move, urging me to flee. Lucy. My voice cracked like old bones under pressure. I forced myself forward, only to stumble over broken shards of glass scattered across the floor, glinting with ominous reflections in the dim light. Each step resonated like a funeral march, echoing into the void, lost to the howling winds curdling outside. In this hallowed prison, remnants of the past beckoned me, fragments of memories interred beneath layers of dust and sorrow. I peered closer at the shards, and my heart sank as I caught glimpses of Lucy's face among the broken pieces. Each reflection waved like a bizarre mirage, flickering and collapsing, leaving me grasping at wisps of hope that dissipated before I could hold them. The air shifted, and a crawling sense of dread stole over me as I sensed another presence. I was not alone. From the shadows emerged a figure draped in darkness, its form shrouded in tattered rags that whispered across the floor like sinister secrets. The entity bore no face, yet I felt the weight of its gaze upon me, heavy and scrutinizing. "Do you seek her?" It intoned, voice like gravel being ground underfoot, reverberating through the empty space. "Yes, please, tell me where she is," I cried, desperation spilling from my lips as I felt the fragile thread of my sanity fraying. "Time is not your ally," it hissed, slithering closer, its presence an oppressive force. "She is bound here, as are we all. The choice must be made, but the price? The price is steep." "What do you mean?" I stammered, recoiling instinctively as it drew nearer. The creature chuckled, the sound echoing too long in the silence, a vile celebration woven into the very air. "You wish to rewrite the past, but with every turn of the page, a soul must pay in blood. The shadows thirst for sacrifice." A chill swept across my skin, crawling along my spine like ice. I remembered the doll, still held tightly in my hand, its porcelain cool, yet somehow alive, radiating warmth beneath my touch. "No, I won't do that. They'll find another way. It is not your choice." Its voice slithered into my mind, flicking at the edges of my resolve. "She is waiting. The chains that bind her are the very chains you wear. What are you willing to pay, young seeker?" Suddenly, the lights flicked off completely, plunging me into an oppressive blackness that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Panic clawed at my throat, but then a haunting melody filtered through the air, soft yet sorrowful, a lullaby from a time long before, the notes weaving through the darkness like thin threads of light, illuminating the weight of my despair. "Find me before it's too late," Lucy's voice sang from the shadows, the sorrow nestled deep in every note. The desperation within my heart blossomed into a relentless need to break free from this ominous grasp. "Lucy," I called, feeling the chill begin to dissolve inside me. "Where are you? Do you wish to save her?" The darkness coiled tighter around me, and I felt its sickening pulse in rhythm with my racing heart. "Then you must fulfill the bargain." Rage clashed with despair within me. I had come this far, how dare it suggest I sacrifice anything? "I want. I refuse." The entity hissed, its voice like a serpent sliding through the grass, uncaring yet unwavering. "You have no power in this realm. You are a lost soul, just as she is. Embrace the darkness. It is your only friend." And in that chilling moment, the shadows thrashed violently around me, and the room shifted. The air thickened, transforms, and twisted. Gnarled limbs materialized from the walls, grasping and tearing at my clothes, threatening to pull me into the abyss. I was swept into a whirlwind of memories, the air pulsating with voices of the past, spiraling into a frenzy that brought tears to my eyes. "Help me!" Lucy's voice cut through the cacophony, raw and desperate. The figure loomed closer, one clawed hand ripping away the veil of night, revealing glimpses of a room heavy with sorrow, an old bed draped in shadows, and something trapped within screaming silently behind broken glass. Then the searing cold seeped through, and I knew time was slipping away with every second. "Lucy!" I screamed, fighting against the gnashing teeth of darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. That moment, my grip on the doll tightened almost instinctively. It pulsed, thrumming with energy, a heartbeat of its own enticing me to use its power. My heart raced as urgency and fear melded into a singular resolve, but the shadows laughed, a hideous sound that resonated deep into my bones. "It is not strength you need, little one," it rasped, its voice weaving into my thoughts. "It is the sacrifice you're willing to offer." Lucy's cries echoed in my mind, and for an unbearable second, I felt my resistance falter. What if the only way to save her and myself was to relinquish everything I had ever known? As the darkness thickened, squeezing the very air from my lungs, the walls began to shift once more, revealing a door rusted and adorned with the cruelest of designs. It stood ajar, a beacon against the night, a gateway beckoning with promises of answers. "Will you open it?" the shadows whispered. "Will you embrace your fate?" I took one deep breath, the doll trembling in my grip, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. And just as I set my foot toward that cursed threshold, a shriek erupted from behind me, echoing with such unfathomable agony that it knocked the wind from my lungs. "Help! Don't leave me!" The weight of my decision hung in the balance, and as I turned to face the haunting cry, I glimpsed a figure slipping from the shadows, her face pale and laced with terror. But in doing so, I felt the door begin to close, a scream of wood scraping against darkness, forcing my hand to choose. Lucy's cries, or the pull of the mysteries that lay beyond, but the shadows surged around me with a mind of their own, pulling away the very ground beneath my feet, and as I stumbled, the last command resonated in my mind, wrenching at my soul. "Choose wisely or be lost forever." I fell into uncertainty, and as darkness enveloped me, an explosion of light erupted, illuminating all that I had traveled, shattering the world around me, yet providing no answers, only more questions and horrors yet to face. What lay beyond the door? And would I find Lucy before the darkness consumed us both? The light succumbed to blackness, swallowing the remnants of what I once knew, and as silence enveloped me, a weight settled heavily on my chest. I gasped, mentally bracing myself for the icy fingers creeping toward my heart. But instead, I felt warmth, not the comforting embrace of sunlight, but the electric charge of a presence hovering in the air around me. Fleeting flashes of images danced before my eyes. Lucy with her golden curls under a radiant sky, laughter ringing like chimes, a room filled with unspeakable anguish, her silhouette pinned against the glass. And just beyond, a reflection that was mine yet twisted, a silhouette of despair pulling at my every thought. The warmth caressed my skin, ethereal smoke weaving around me like a lover's touch. Then came the whispers, a chorus of sorrowful voices drowning out my own thoughts. "We are waiting," they chanted, melding into a singular, haunting melody steeped in grief, reverberating within a void that conspired against my very essence. "Lucy!" I cried, but my voice echoed back at me, fractured and broken. I stumbled in the pitch blackness, apprehension clawing at my gut, and yet I felt something beneath my feet, the familiar dull ache of the broken glass that had littered the floor of that grim chamber. My heart raced. I was back in that forsaken room, on never-ending loop spun from the threads of my torment. The choice of voice lingered, slithering like smoke through the air. "What will you sacrifice?" As I blinked into the darkness, forms began to materialize, specters twisted in agony floating mere inches away, their faces grotesque reminders of lost lives. I clamped my eyes shut, but it was no use. Their wails clawed into my mind, tearing me apart with memories of regret and desperation. "Help us!" they cried, each voice like a dagger, piercing deeper into my marrow. I felt them circling me, pulling at the threads of my sanity with hollow eyes that spoke of unfinished business and unsung horrors. Among them, I spied something more definite, a figure emerging slowly from the shadows. My breath hitched as clarity pierced the veil. Lucy. Her features were gaunt, her skin pale and glistening with an unhealthy sheen, eyes wide and unseeing as she floated, entrapped in the very air, yet she seemed to beckon toward me. Please. Her voice shattered through the chaos, cracking the very air, fragile yet resonating with a desperate plea. You must help me. The chains, they bind us all. I extended a hand instinctively, but just as our fingers were about to touch, a searing pain shot through my side. It felt as though something invisible and predatory had latched onto my very soul. I gasped, falling to my knees, a cry of agony trapped in my throat. An apparition bursting forth from the darkness beside me shrieked, its face a contortion of rage and sorrow, merging with my pain. Your sacrifice shall feed the darkness. It roared, its grotesque visage morphing into something incomprehensible, all teeth and malice, its hunger palpable, tearing at the seams of reality. And oh, I won't let you. Before I could finish, shadows pinched my arms, dragging me into a dance of violence. The walls shuddered, the whispers ramping up to a fever pitch. They swarmed around me, a tide of hopelessness threatening to drown me in despair. Choose. Came the voice, deeper now, reverberating through the chaos. What will be your offering? Through the torrent of fear, my thoughts spun wildly. I thought of the doll still tightly clutched in my hand, its porcelain light flickering like a dying ember. It can't be my soul connection to Lucy. No, I bellowed, forcing my will against the pressing darkness. My heart raced, regret clawing desperately at my chest as I remembered the joy the doll had once brought, a light in the shadow of loss. Yet, I could feel its draw, the temptation of the entity wrapped around me. Offering or loss, the figure hissed, a sadistic glee punctuating its breath. You don't understand the cost, young one. As I wrestled to break free, a dark hand gripped my skull, yanking me back with an unrelenting force. You cannot escape. She is ours now. I remembered the sorrow embedded within Lucy's voice, the desperate lullaby calling me forth amid the chaos. I won't lose you, Lucy. With a surge of adrenaline, I summoned every ounce of resolve and hurled the doll at the apparition. Silence. An unnatural stillness fell, time bending and contorting in the thick, oppressive dark. The shadow halted mid-grimace, confusion flickering across its twisted face. But then it laughed, a sound that set my teeth on edge, echoing like thunder. Foolish child. The darkness only hungers more. As the room morphed again, a chasm appeared beneath my feet, splintering wide and loud. I felt the pull, no longer of shadows but of raw terror, and instinctively lunged back, reaching for Lucy as she began to slip away from the edge. Her eyes met mine, filled with unyielding fear, and through the chaotic storm of anguished souls around us, she groped for my hand. Please, I need you, she screamed, and in a pivotal moment filled with heart-wrenching despair, I glimpsed the truth behind her sad gaze. The room vibrated with an unearthly scream, and as the shadows roared, I understood I was faced with a choice darker than any other. Letting go could cost me everything. Holding on could condemn us both. The chasm yawned wider, shadows erupting into chaos, a darkness alive and eager to consume. Choose. The voice cried, and then I felt Lucy's fingers brush against mine, warmth adapting to the coldness creeping in, an electric connection that ignited a flicker of rebellion in my chest. Would I dare to cross the threshold? Would I face the impending darkness to save her, or would I plunge into the void, perhaps lost forever? As I braced against the pull of the abyss beneath, the shrieking souls around us swirled in a desperate waltz, spiraling toward the chasm, their haunting wails growing more insistent, more demanding. Suddenly, a deep rumble echoed throughout, shaking the walls with finality. The shadows shrieked and clawed around me, and the last flicker of light glared from Lucy's eyes. Decide. Time is running out. Then the ground beneath me trembled, crackling against the silence. The door behind me groaned under the dreadful weight of shadows pressing forward, and as they erupted from the depths, I felt the cold air swallow me whole. Caught between worlds, I grasped for her hand and screamed into the dark. Yet all I heard was the laughter, a horrific symphony drowning my heartbeat. And suddenly, the last thing I saw was Lucy's face twisted in an eternal scream as the darkness clawed at her. And then I fell, screaming into the abyss, in a treacherous descent, where time ceased to exist, toward an unspeakable horror, the shadows urging me deeper into their embrace as everything faded away. The descent seemed interminable, a spiraling void that grasped at my soul. In that haunting stillness, I felt as if everything I had known was vanishing, eroded by the very fabric of darkness around me. My heart thundered as I plunged deeper into a realm where shadows danced and whispered ancient curses, and memories faded like echoes. Somewhere far above, Lucy's voice was a soft tremor, fading into silence. Even her cries became a mere ghost. The frigid grip of despair tightened around me, mimicking the sensation of water filling my lungs, dragging me under, the abyss welcoming me as though it had claimed so many before. Then, in a shivering instant, the descent fractured, breaking into shards that scattered through the darkness like cruel shards of glass. I landed hard against a surface I couldn't see, gasping for air as the cold seeped into my bones. As my vision cleared, the world around me unfurled a grotesque vista of the damned. I was in a corridor, endless and dimly lit, the fluorescent bulbs flickering erratically like whispers of reluctant spirits. An unseemly chill grazed my skin, sending shivers racing through my spine as I recalled the invitation to enter the haunted motel. The voice, its terrible laughter, still echoed in the recesses of my mind, twisting the atmosphere into one thick with dread that I scrambled to my feet, the lingering sensation of Lucy's warmth still flickering in my memory. "Lucy," I called into the gloom, my voice barely passing through the thick veil of uncertainty. It was useless. No answer came except a sinister caress of wind that spiraled down the very pipes of reality, taunting me with its eerie silence. The walls began to murmur, shadows curling and curling like tendrils of smoke around me. As the feeling of being watched intensified, I inched forward, reluctant yet compelled to move. Each footstep echoed ominously against the cracked tiles, the floor exuding an unspeakable history steeped in suffering. Just ahead, I discerned a doorroom 403, weathered and worn, splashed with faded streaks of red still visible under layers of grime. Its face bore the weight of stories, untold horrors whispered beyond the threshold, resonating with an insistent pull that drew me closer. I no longer had a choice. It was as if I were a moth circling a flickering flame. I placed my trembling hand on the doorknob. Eternita groaned, tortured from disuse. The door swung open with a sigh. I was engulfed by thick, musty air that tasted of decay and despair. Inside, the room was swallowed in semi-darkness, its contents concealed beneath sheets like rotting memories ready to be unraveled. Shadows clung to the corners, eager to weave tales of torment. "Lucy?" My voice trembled. I stepped inside, every instinct warning me against it, yet a kinship with this suffocating darkness urged me on. And then I saw her. In the far corner of the room, just beyond an ancient mirror that reflected nothing but despair, Lucy sat with her back to me, knees drawn to her chest, her golden locks cascading over her shoulders like a wraith. I could barely breathe. My heart raced as I scanned the dimness for signs of hope. "Lucy," I shouted, rushing toward her, but as I crossed the threshold, a chilling realization seized me. The air crackled, a static tingle that warned me of danger. In that moment, Lucy turned slowly, her face now an eerie mask of terror, her eyes blackened and hollow, holding a depth of torment that shattered me. "Don't come any closer," she rasped, her voice alien and unnatural, reverberating in the walls. "You cannot save me, you mustn't." "Why? What happened?" Her mouth twisted into a grotesque smile, devoid of warmth and compassion. "They have taken me. The chains bind me still. You must leave before the darkness consumes you too." Before I could grasp the meaning behind her words, the shadows erupted from within the walls, spilling and coiling around me like liquid night, slippery and cold. I fought not to succumb, not yet ready to let the darkness win, but they reached for me, fingers of shadows tightening around my ankles. "Lucy, help me," I cried, desperation clutching my heart as I lunged for her. But an unseen force hurled me back, slamming me against the cold wall. "Wake up, please!" Suddenly, another cry shattered the era cacophony of voices wailing from the abyss, and a dreadful recognition took hold. I turned, beholding a myriad of faces trapped within the reflections of the mirror, twisted, anguished visages stretching their mouths wide, their cries overlapping and overlapping until I could almost decipher their tales of woes if synchronizing with my realization. The shadows tightened their grip and lured me closer to the mirror, the surface rippling ominously. Within it, I could see images of my life flicker, moments of joy, agony, decisions twisted by regret. My entire existence warped and twisted before mid-doubt clawing at my mind. Then my gaze returned to Lucy. Breathless despair overwhelmed me as I saw her silent scream, not of fear, but of loss, of a burden too heinous to bear. The realization hit like a freight train. I was not the only one fighting for escape. The shadows were gathering, ready to consume even more souls in their relentless hunger. And just as Lucy whispered, "Run," the room plunged deeper into chaos. Cracks began splitting the walls as echoes grew louder, overlapping with screams of the forgotten. I felt the shadows lurch forward, enraptured by the essence of life and hope. "Leave. Find the truth." And in that trembling moment, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. Something slipped within me. A final cry from her heart clashing with the shadows. My feverish urge to save her was eclipsed by the icy grip of fear. I turned to flee, the darkness howling behind me, its laughter insatiable and monstrous, hungry for my despair. The crack in the wall yawned wider, ready to swallow me whole. But as I raced toward the door, the mirror pulsed, pulsating with a life of its own. Then, as I escaped, I caught a glimpse of a final Imagia shadow with golden curls drifting beneath a void that echoed with wails. A fractured reflection of all that was lost. I surged forward, pushing against everything tethering me to this haunted place. But just as I grasped the doorknob, a voice boomed, resonating in the very marrow of my bones. "Leave, but the cost will be yours to bear." With that, I burst through the doorway, only to be met by an unexpected horror. The corridor closed in like a serpent swallowing its tail, and I could feel their cold touch on my skin. There, in the horrifying reflection before me, was not just Lucy's image but 1,000 ghostly figures emerging behind me, lost, chained, and demanding their due. Choose your path. Inherit the fight or become a part of the lost. I froze, and as I turned back, shadows swallowed the space behind me, and the door sealed shut with a thunderous crack. The reflections rippled, warping into a grotesque tapestry of sorrow, and the door to escape melted into a blackened void. The only thing ahead now was the darkness, hungry and unforgiving, its call deafening. And as I felt the weight of their despair closing in around me, I understood the depth of the cost. All that was left was a scream that echoed into the very fabric of night. "Lucy!" I screamed, but my voice was absorbed by the shadows as I stepped forward into the void, knowing that somehow, every sacrifice could lead to unspeakable truths and perhaps an even worse fate awaited me. The darkness expanded, a yawning maw that swallowed every hint of light, an abyss where my soul teetered on the brink. I felt the remnants of Lucy's warmth cloying at my heart, a desperate tether in a storm I didn't know how to navigate. The silence was uproarious, jagged shards of it cutting deeper with every breath I took. As I stumbled forward, the shadows encroached, each whisper a rending echo of past torments. It folded and unfolded around me, twisting into shapes that were once familiar, faces flashing in and out of view. I choked on the panic swelling within me, the cries of the specters trapped behind the mirror pulsing in my mind like a heartbeat. They knew something I didn't, and their bewitching presence beckoned me like a moth to a flame. I pressed on, my feet dragging through the thickening darkness until I reached a threshold that groaned under the weight of despair. A once ornate door stood before me, now splintered and doused in shadows. Heavy with malevolence, it seemed to pulse with a life of its own, waiting for me to cross the threshold. Tentatively, I pushed it open, the creaking protest of the hinges feeling both familiar and foreign, as if I had done this before, a looping dream now manifesting in vivid horror. Inside, the room was cloaked in shadows that slithered along the walls, flowing like blood into the very fabric of the motel itself. The air hung heavy with a putrid staleness, and in the far corner, another mirror reflected the chaos. Only this time, it was the reflection of the room I now stood in. But the reflection was wrong. It was steeped in decay, appearing to flicker in and out like an old film reel. And there, in its depths, I saw her again, Lucy, but she was not alone. A collection of dark, amorphous shapes swirled around her, clawing at her sanity, their collective whispers merging into a guttural chant that filled the entire space. "Join us," they droned, a chorus of sorrow-filled tormentors, eyes wide, mouths agape as they reached through the mirror like long-forgotten souls begging for release. "Lucy," I screamed, my heart tearing against the invisible chains that bound me. "I'm coming." Yet, the words escaped me with a hollow tone, a futile sound swallowed by the oppressive darkness. Each step I took felt like wading through molasses, quest for the truth yielding nothing but despair. I pressed against the mirror's cold surface, desperate to pull her back to me, unaware that the shadows were gathering, an undercurrent of rage directed at my very existence. "Don't touch it." Lucy's voice sliced through the enveloping gloom, sharper than glass. "It will take you too." I hesitated, a distant dread clawing at me as I turned away from her. I was losing her, inch by inch. "You have to fight," I shouted, trying desperately to reach her through the oppressive veil of darkness that threatened to claim us both. But something deeper stirred within the mirror. It quaked and shifted, rupturing the surface and spilling forth a flurry of dark shapes. I stumbled back as a frigid wind erupted from within the glass, swatting at my legs, and stronger shadows lunged from the depths. "And oh!" I screamed, wrenching myself away, but the shadows caught my leg and pulled me towards the cursed mirror, its surface now swirling with images of life and death, warmth and agonia, tapestry woven from my own fragmented memories. They yearned to pull me into their despair, to add my cries to their cacophony. And just as their hands began to grip my throat, an ear-piercing wail erupted from the depths of the mirror. It shattered the air, leaving shards cascading down like sleet. Through this maelstrom of agony, a voice rang, true yet deep, echoing roar that sent tremors through my very being. "You must choose." As the shadows thrashed, a single ghostly figure rose from the ruins of the glass. It coalesced into a blurred outline, the wretched countenance of my own reflection staring back at me, a version so twisted and tormented that its eyes glared with a terrible familiarity. It beckoned with skeletal fingers, urging me to accept my fate. "Join us. Become one with the lost," it rasped, the waxy voice cloaked in dread and finality. "Find peace in darkness." Desperation surged within me, a fight for my own existence, a race against time as the last vestiges of Lucy faded behind the veil, her face etched with heart-wrenching grief. The shadows roared, empty promises curling around my mind like vengeful snakes. "Lucy," I screamed again, "I will not let you be lost." Yet, with every heartbeat, the mirror glimmered, cold and inviting. Its edges dripped with promise and forgotten desires. I could feel the darkness wrap around me, an embrace that was both soothing and repugnant, pulling me toward the edge of that inevitable choice. As my mind swirled with dread and hope, a blinding light flared momentarily, illuminating the chaos. And for a fleeting moment, I glimpsed the true horror behind that reflection, the countless souls that had been consumed before me, their eyes now flickering out like dying stars. And then, the door behind me slammed shut with a thunderous crack, sealing the fate of whatever lay beyond. Trapped and trembling, I gazed back at the chaos welling before me. The crack in the mirror pulsed ominously, its depths threatening to consume even the last flicker of hope. "Will you join the lost?" The specter whispered, drawing ever closer, a twisted reflection of my own torment. But as I prepared to fight and reject that offer, something unimaginable happened. The mirror shattered into 1,000 splinters, revealing what lay beyond, a darkness deeper and more insatiable than I could ever fathom. And from that void, a chorus of wailing began anew, each note a chilling reminder that my choices had led me here. The last thing I saw was Lucy's reflection in one of the shards, eyes wide, her mouth silently pleading for my choice to be one that would save her. The shadows lunged forward, dragging me down into their embrace, even as I fought against the overwhelming dread, and then everything went black. Choose. A voice thundered as the abyss surrounded me. But was it too late? As the last sliver of light flickered out, I realized there was only one way the night could end. I awoke with a violent gasp, my lungs burning as if I had just surfaced from an ocean depths, the air around me thick and suffocating. Panic gripped my heart, each beat echoing in the silence, a hollow reminder of the void I was flung into. I lay on a cold, hard floor littered with shards of glass, reflecting an image of my disheveled self mingling with fragments of grotesque faces, twisted and mournful, trapped within. Struggling to rise, I found myself in an unfamiliar room, draped in shadows that slithered and pulsed, as if each corner held a secret, darkly alive. I glanced up and caught sight of the remnants of a mirror hanging skewed on the far wall uneven, like a broken promise, casting distorted images of my surroundings, taunting me. Had I been absorbed into the very essence of the darkness? Or was this merely a pitfall of my shattered mind? A low, guttural laugh echoed through the air, reverberating against the walls. "Welcome back, traveler." The voice was smooth, sinister, a welcome too sweet for comfort. It coiled around me, infecting my thoughts with dread. Instinct urged me to flee, but my limbs felt heavy as if weighed down by unseen chains, anchored to this abyss. "Lucy," I cried, my voice trembling as it ricocheted off the walls, mingling with the chilling laughter. "Are you here?" The silence that followed was oppressive, the shadows growing thicker as they crawled toward me with a sinister intent. With desperate resolve, I brushed aside the glass shards that clung to my skin like a coffin's embrace and forced myself to stand. As I turned, I noticed the door, partially ajar, darkness coiling around the edges as if the shadows within were holding it shut, refusing to allow escape. Compelled to speak, I forced the words out, trembling with uncertainty. "What is this place?" Silence. Again, before responses began to echo back, disembodied whispers creeping within my mind like phantoms. "This is where lost souls linger, where decisions are forged in despair." They melded into an eerie chant, rising and falling, surrounding me like a fog. "Join us, save her, let go." My heart raced, and my thoughts flew wild. The mirror behind me shimmered with an unsettling energy, shifting like a serpent coiled to strike. I approached cautiously, glaring into the fractured surface. Through the jumbled reflections, I spotted impossible things, a fervor of movements, glimpses of Lucy intertwined with ghastly figures, their eyes pleading as past memories interlaced with horrors I had not witnessed. "Help me." Another voice cried, distant yet achingly familiar. Was it truly her? Or a cruel trick manufactured by the very darkness I sought to escape? "Lucy, where are you?" My voice cracked, determination lacing the edges of my fear. The shadows lurked closer. I felt their breath against my skin, cold and empty. Then suddenly, the glass rippled like water. "You see what they are," the smooth voice cooed again, echoing all around me. "They want you. They crave you. No." I shouted defiantly, recoiling from the mirror as if it were an infernal beast. I took a fervent step back, only to be met with a barrier of palpable darkness, pushing harder as it prevented my escape. With nowhere left to run, I gripped my head, struggling to maintain clarity amid the chaos swirling around me. The figures in the glass danced with freedom, leading me deeper into the hurricane of despair until they solidified at the edge of the glass, straining towards me, mouths moving without sound, their desperate urgency vibrating through the air. I heard them in their muffled pleas. The unmistakable notes of Lucy's voice sounded amongst them, each plea a dagger to my heart. "Choose." They chorused, their eyes pooling with anguish and terror. "Free us. Embrace the darkness." "No, I will not," I screamed, punctuated by a wave of determination I had thought lost. But only the shadows responded, swirling around me with malicious glee, as if mocking my refusal. Suddenly, the door behind me began to burst open slowly, agonizingly, as though the darkness itself fought to keep it shut. A sharp creak pierced through the dank air, and I strained to peer into the threshold beyond. "What's happening?" I said aloud, confusion mingling with fear. The rippling energy inside the mirror intensified, and from it erupted a scream, distorted and horrifying, echoing like the wail of a banshee. The glass cracked even further, threatening to splinter and unleash its contents. Terror consumed me, and instinct kicked in. I needed to control this vortex of despair that waged war against my will. In desperation, I rushed towards the mirror again, intending to confront what lurked within. But as I did, the door behind me flew wide open, revealing a blinding light that poured into the room like molten fury. Once more, the echo of Lucy's voice floated to me, softer this time, wrapped in warmth but drained of strength. Find me. The light coalesced into a figure, indistinct yet ethereal. A hand extended towards me, shimmering like a beacon amidst the dark, while the whispers surged around me. The cacophony of pleas crescendoed, the figures within the mirror clawing at the edges, desperate for release. Then time stood still. The shadows around me shuddered, holding their breath, as a single whisper quivered through the tumult. Make your choice now. As I grappled with thoughts filled with dread and hope, the shatters of glass echoed ominously behind meth realm of darkness closed in, while the radiant figure before me beckoned with urgency. And oh, don't lose her. A final deafening roar erupted from the shadows, shaking the room as the mirror began to implode, dark hands reaching out, pulling me toward an unknown fate. In that instant, I felt the weight of countless souls upon me, the insistence of their despair igniting my soul as I faced the open door, the uncertain warmth beyond beckoning me closer, while the relentless darkness dragged at my feet. And then, the world fragmented, scattering around me, as I was torn between the choices before me, teetering on the edge of oblivion. Save her. Join us. The voices screamed, drowning out my thoughts, drowning out everything. But it was too late for choices, too late for hope. With my last breath, I screamed, Lucy. And then, the blackness consumed all. I awoke in a disoriented haze, the familiar cold floor sending ripples of awareness into my mind. My heart hammered against my ribcage as I sat up, surrounded by flickering shadows and remnants of agonizing whispers. I was back in the cursed motel, trapped once more within that accursed room 403. But now it felt different, thicker, more suffocating, as if the very air conspired against me. Through the oppressive atmosphere, I strained to listen, to feel anything that might guide me through this hellish nightmare. The whispered cries grew louder, a cacophony of desperation echoing against the walls, drowning me in the weight of their sorrow. Lucy, I screamed, my voice breaking, aching to pierce through the murky silence. Then, something shifted in the corner of my eye, a motion that sent chills racing down my spine. I turned, breath held tight in my chest, to see the mirror once again. But this time, it appeared different. The surface was alive, swirling with dark energies, showing flashes of torment I couldn't decipher. And there, embedded among the visions, I caught a glimpse of her, Lucy, her face twisted in a rictus of dread and despair as she reached toward me. Help me, her voice broke through, fragile yet piercing, sending a pang of guilt slashing through me. I was the one who had ventured into this nightmare, the one who had succumbed to the darkness threatening to consume her. Lucy, I'm coming. I willed myself forward, but the moment my fingers brushed against the mirror, it rippled violently, distorting her image into something grotesque, a mingling of her suffering with the tormented souls trapped within. Join us, the entities echoed, their voices weaving together into a sinister chant. Become one with the lost. The shadows surged, clawing at the space around me, and I stumbled back, fear coiling in my gut. I needed to think, to find some way out, but each thought was a thread taut with despair, fraying against the weight of their cries. Then, clarity sprang upon me as a fleeting notion. I remembered the choice echoing through this haunted place. A soul for a soul. The realization sent ice through my veins. My own darkness mirrored the shadows surrounding me. They wanted me to sacrifice, to grasp the power that lay behind despair, corrupting all it touched. Decide. A voice thundered, wrapping around me, a malevolent reminder of the impending doom. You must choose. My gaze flickered back to the mirror, which swirled angrily, the myriad of faces behind it screaming, desperate to pull me in. But in the depths of that swirling chaos, I finally saw the truth hidden beneath the anguish, the secrets buried within this haunted past, the source of the curse tethering me here, the warnings long whispered across these cursed walls. Lucy, my voice broke, an understanding simmering in my heart. I wouldn't let them win. I could feel their insatiable hunger clawing at the edges of my mind. Yet something more profound surged in response, the will to confront the darkness. That I stepped closer to the mirror, feeling the heat of its malevolence radiate against my skin. No, I will not succumb to your despair, I shouted, pouring every ounce of defiance into my plea. Before the darkness could ensnare me, I hurled my fear against it, my voice echoing, "You don't own me. None of you do." The mirror rippled violently, and for a moment, the shadows halted, their formless bodies hesitating as if they had never encountered such resistance. I pressed forward, facing down the swirling tendrils reaching out from within. "I won't surrender my soul. I will find Lucy." The shadows howled, a symphony of rage and anguish as they surged forward, attempting to ensnare me once again. Yet I held fast, grounding myself against their overwhelming pull even as they lunged. "I will save my friend," I screamed, grounded by the clarity of my conviction. But just as I began to believe I could confront the memory that held Lucy captive, a fierce gale erupted from the mirror. It tore at my resolve and hurled me back, crashing against the wall, rattling memories loose from their haunted prison. Days clouded my vision, and in the midst of my confusion, I felt a cold hand wrap around my throat, a familiar chill that sent waves of horror pouring over me. "Welcome to your end," a voice low and sinister hissed from the shadows, and it sent tremors through me as I turned slightly, catching sight of the figure lurking in the periphery. There it was, the twisted specter of myself, fully formed now, a grotesque parody of who I had been, eyes hollow and darkened, smirking with an all-knowing malice. I gasped, recognizing the disappointment swirling behind its gaze. It embodied everything I feared and hated. "To save Lucy," it teased, "you must embrace where you come from. The darkness infests you already, child." "No." The word tumbled out like thunder as I fought against the shadows choking my throat. "You don't exist." But the creature's laughter filled the room, an eerie crescendo that turned the air heavy. Desperation fueled my fight. I pulled myself up, determination igniting within, not just for Lucy but for my own soul. "I am more than this," I screamed. The ghost of my torment mirrored my cry, lunging toward me as shadows undulated around it, eager to consume. In that moment, I felt the walls of room 403 shaking as dark memories clawed at my mind, begging me to succumb to temptation. And yet, I could see it clearly now, the faces merging again within the mirror, their agonized expressions showing me the truth. They were mere reflections of the choices I had faced time and again. "Find her," they screamed collectively, and Lucy's voice broke through again. "Remember me. You promised you wouldn't abandon me." "Lucy," I choked out against the shadows, and clarity sprung anew. She needed me to remember the bonds of friendship, the light we could forge from this darkness. With renewed vigor, I wrenched free from the phantom that struggled to claim me, pushing against it with every ounce of courage I could muster. "I will face this darkness for you, Lucy. I refuse to let it take you. As long as I still breathe, I will find you." Confronted with the echoes of my past, the amalgamate essence of fear and regret, I knew I had to transform what plagued me into the strength that would save us. "You will not claim my past. You will not ensnare Lucy or me," I roared, throwing my heart and my longing against the horrific specter. It paused for a heartbeat, and the shadows wailed, drawing back momentarily. Seizing the opportunity and the strength of my purpose, I lunged forward, fists crashing against the mirror. With a violent shatter, the glass split, sending shockwaves rippling outward. The shadows thickened, swirling violently around the room, yanking at the remnants of my resolve as the faces of despair converged. But it was too late. The light within me sparked and flared, glowing bright. "Lucy, I'm here," I yelled, energy surging as the depths of darkness heaved in fury. With one final push, I felt the power of their cries bend around me, and I tore through the shattered mirror, fragments igniting in explosions of light. As the darkness screamed in outrage, I grasped onto Lucy's essence tightly, feeling her warmth coil around me like ribbons of hope, and together, we surged through the breaking threshold. Then, in a blinding flash, I found myself enveloped in light. When the brightness receded, I awoke, knelt upon the cold floor of room 403 once more. I was disoriented at first, but I quickly took in my surroundings, the air, still stale but void of shadows. The walls, devoid of tormenting whispers. There, near the corner of the room, I saw Hera's shimmering silhouette framed in ethereal light. Lucy. I called, rushing toward her, and as I pulled her into an embrace, the warmth radiating between us expelled the last remnants of terror. I found you. I laughed, joy blooming in my chest. And then, slowly, a darkness creeped back, swirling at the periphery of my vision, echoing haunting notes like a reminder the shadows had not been vanquished forever. My heart sank as I turned, the room beginning to dissolve and fade, shadows lingering at the threshold, promising pain and despair. Time felt fickle, and reality wavered. What is this? They won't stop? In that instant, I understood the truth. We had escaped room 403, but the darkness would never be vanquished. It had become a part of me, woven irrevocably into the fabric of my soul. Lucy clung to my arm, her eyes wide with fear. We have to go? They're coming. As we stumbled to the door, the laughter echoed once more, a faint murmur of torment and grief chasing us into the ether. We were free, but I could feel the remnants of despair swirling around us, an eternal echo of souls longing to breach the surface, forever seeking solace. And as we crossed the threshold into the light, the last thing I knew was that even the brightest dawn has its hidden shadows. No matter how far we fled, the darkness will always linger at our side. I in the fading light, I could almost hear their chorus whispering behind me. You can never truly escape, you can only hide.